Welcome back, WNST, Chelsea, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively into bye week. Felt like bye week last week, but the Thanksgiving always feels that way. They picked the trash up on the wrong day. The kids aren't in school, all that stuff. We're back at it this week. We'll be back in school on Wednesday. We're going to be at Coco's Pub doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with our friends at Win Donation, 866-90Nation, as well as our friends at Jiffy Lube Multicare. This week at Coco's on Wednesday. Thursday we'll be at Gertrude's at the BMA with Dan Rodrigues. And on Friday at Hollywood Casino in Perryville, where my picks were better this week, but certainly not great. And Tom Kelso is going to be joining us, former Maryland Stadium Authority chairman. You've heard him here. We're going to go long form on what happens to $1.2 billion when John Angelos says that's not enough money. But certainly for Sunday night, Sunday, man, we had football all day Thursday. We had football half the day Friday. We had college football all day Saturday, which might have been the best football of the weekend. And, I'm not the biggest college football guy. And then Sunday night, I was waiting all day for the Ravens to get out to L.A. It's kind of shocked there was many people there as there were. I didn't think the Chargers had caught on quite that way as the 4-6 team, now the 4-7 team. Luke Jones joins us now to discuss the aftermath of, I don't know, the Ravens had a scare. They're in every game. It's the NFL. They went on the road. They went 3,000 miles. They covered the spread. They won. I mean, I would say style points, maybe not so much, but that's not exactly what you're looking for before the bye. They are being talked about by everyone on television all day Thursday, Friday, even in the college game on Saturday, as a Super Bowl, not just contender, but a favorite at this point, Luke.
Well, I think it depends on what you mean by favorite. If you're talking about in that conversation as the top 3 or 4 teams, absolutely. I don't know if I'd consider them the overall favorite, but hey, they're 9-3 going into the bye week. I think you look at the entire AFC landscape, including Kansas City, who certainly had a nice bounce back performance, but there have been questions about their offense. But I think you look at the Ravens, and I've said it for a few weeks now, that I don't think there's a team in the NFL playing better than them right now. Give credit to the Philadelphia Eagles after knocking off the Bills in an overtime classic late Sunday afternoon into the evening. But for me, I think there were breakdowns in just about every phase other than the Ravens defense that played at an absolute championship level. This is a Chargers team. We talked about it last week, talked about it with Dennis as well. It's a legitimate offense that they have, and specifically their passing game. And Justin Herbert, while people will bemoan him being overrated in some circles, he's a good quarterback. He's a very talented quarterback. I think everyone would at least agree on that much. And the Ravens defense limited them to 10 points. They forced 4 turnovers, and they got very little help from their offense. They didn't get much help from their special teams. They didn't get much help from their head coach, who I thought had a pretty miserable night, if we're going to call a spade, with some of his in-game managing or lack thereof. So there was a lot that did not go well in this football game for the Ravens on Sunday night, but the defense was absolutely fantastic, and that's the reason why they win 20-10. They come home, they're going into the bye, and they are 9-3. And there's a lot to feel great about overall. But certainly, and we've talked about this now for going on 3 months, that the defense has been the side of the ball while the offense has been very good and even great at times. The defense has been the side of the ball that's been so consistent week in and week out. You can point to maybe a couple quarters where they didn't play well. All year long, they were fantastic for 4 quarters on Sunday night, and the Ravens needed them to in order to improve to 9-3.
I thought both defenses kind of flew to the ball on a Sunday night. I felt that from the Chargers early on, that they were ready to play. And for the Ravens, the running game and losing Andrews and where Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses are just in general in their career and with their health and in the season, where they're getting the bye now, they're going to get some time off. I'm wondering where the time helps them. Certainly Marlon Humphrey's a guy that they miss, but they don't miss. And you only really miss him if the ball can go over your head. And I guess that's the case of Justin Herbert. That's the case of quarterback. Kenny Pickett, not so much. You know what I mean? Dorian Thompson, none of these Gardner Minshew's in the first half of the season are going to throw the ball over your head all day long. They might beat you once, but the Marlon Humphrey thing, they can do without him when they're playing quarterbacks that aren't going to do that to them, where there's no healthy Burrow and a healthy Chase, where every play down the field, you have a chance for the other offense to take the top off. Not a lot of offenses can play that way. And I think missing Humphrey right now, if they can get him back for when they really need him, and he's been a question mark as well. But to have their best player on defense or their highest paid player not be able to play so much or so well this year and still have the defense be dominant. I mean, it really does go back to Roquan Smith, right? Like I retweeted Dennis in the third quarter after Roquan did something, and he does something every week that, and I, for the young guys out there, I saw Ray Lewis play every week. It's kind of what it looked like. Every week there's some sort of highlight, some sort of thing, some sort of fly to the ball that makes you say, well, without Roquan Smith, this would be different. I mean, he is their Lamar on the defense.
Um, Look, Roquan Smith's been great. It's more than Roquan Smith. I mean, Mike Macdonald's doing a fantastic, phenomenal job with his scheme and putting these guys in positions to play at their absolute best. Yes, I think Roquan Smith has absolutely been that force multiplier that Eric DeCosta talked about when they extended him at the end of last season and signed him up for 5 more years. But I think it's more than that. I don't think it is. I don't think Roquan Smith is the Lamar Jackson of this defense. And I don't say that as a knock to Roquan as much as a compliment to the collective ensemble effort that they have going with their defense. I mean, we've talked about it over and over with their pass rush, for example. I mean, they lead the league in sacks, and they have for quite a while. And give credit to Justin Madubuike, who has 10 sacks, first Ravens player to hit double-digit sacks since Suggs back in 2017. So it's been a while, but it's been so many different guys, and it's so many different guys coming from so many different spots and creating so much pre-snap confusion, creating post-snap confusion that it really is for me. I mean, it's Mike Macdonald's a heck of a coach. And I can remember sitting here talking with you a couple years ago when they decided to mutually part ways with Wink Martindale. And, I questioned that at the time. And I didn't think all their failures in 2021 were because of Wink whatsoever. I mean, they had all kinds of injuries, but this change that they've pivoted to and they've transitioned from going to blitzing all the time, putting your corners on an island, to playing a little more zone, but still plenty of man, but more too high looks. Certainly, leaning into more sim pressures than just flat out blitzing as often as Wink Martindale likes to do. So it's been a transition to that, and it's also been a transition on the back end of the defense to playing more what they call positionless defense, where you move guys around. So you mentioned Roquan Smith. I'm going to mention another individual that I think has been so pivotal in this defense hitting another level over the last calendar year. Going back to when Roquan arrived back in early November last year, I think it's Kyle Hamilton. And I think you see what he is able to do for them at wherever he lines up, whether he's lining up at the nickel, whether he's lining up at safety, whether he's lining up as kind of a hybrid linebacker at times. He has been so good for them too. And I think he's becoming one of those guys. You mentioned Marlon Humphrey. I kind of think Kyle Hamilton, not that he's replaced Marlon Humphrey in importance, but I feel like he's kind of jockeyed for position in that pecking order as far as someone who's just really becoming indispensable for them. But it really,
on draft night, we're like, safety? What? He doesn't play that position. I mean, to compare him to Ed Reed, you're comparing apples and oranges. You know what I mean? Like he plays a hybrid position that's more of a hawk position that might have been more of a linebacker Lawrence Taylory kind of position 40 years ago in the game to get after the quarterback. But Mollett is the guy that winds up, being the chaos agent at the end, because you never know where it's coming from. And that was something that Rex Ryan always wanted to do in this defense 20 years ago, but you didn't always have the personnel to do that.
Well, and that's part of it, certainly. But I mean, the Ravens have had plenty of good defenses over the years and great defenses over the years, if you go way back when. But I just think you see so much creativity with the scheme. And this past week, Odafe Owe was asked about it, and he said they're all like little ninjas, that they're lining up and trying to be deceptive and trying to hide and trying to get the timing down for these different stunts and blitzes and sim pressures that they run. That I mean, you made a point talking about some of the backup quarterbacks that they faced, and that's why to me Sunday night was so impressive because say what you want about the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers did plenty of charging. You know, the Ravens tried to do some charging in that game, for lack of a better term, but they're 4-7, and it's mainly because their defense stinks. Now they played well. The Ravens offense didn't play well on Sunday night, but Justin Herbert's legit and Keenan Allen's very legit. And that's a passing game, and an offense that hasn't run the ball very well, but they've been, they entered the week. I think they were 8th in points per game. So this was a very respectable offense and certainly a high quality quarterback. And they did it to him. And to your point, they did it without Marlon Humphrey even. And, we've talked about some of the other guys that they've missed at various times this year. And this defense has rarely missed a beat. I mean, what would you say? I mean, the second half of the Cleveland game, certainly. The Cincinnati, they gave up some rushing yardage, but I think they were kind of daring the Bengals to run. And then, when Burrow exited, it's kind of, okay, they should do that against Jake Browning. And we kind of saw that play out for the Bengals against the Steelers on Sunday. But when it's Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense, the Chargers passing game, and it's playing on the road on Sunday night, and you're fighting the urge to peek ahead to the bye week, knowing that you're a tired football team, even though they've been a very good football team. They've been tested a lot in that way with travel and being on the road. So for that defense to play the way they did for 4 quarters, and they gave up 1 touchdown drive, and the opening drive was a little shaky. They probably got bailed out on the non-call on the sideline. But other than that, they made it extremely difficult for Justin Herbert and the Chargers. It felt like every yard, every first down was an absolute grind and a struggle for the Chargers. And that's just a compliment to the entire defensive operation. And, when you're doing that without Marlon Humphrey, who prior to Roquan Smith arriving was their best player on defense, over the last 3 to 4 years, I think most people would agree with that. So you're doing that and you continue to play at a high level when you're missing one of your best players on that side of the ball. And, we haven't even talked about missing Tyus Bowser or no David Ajabo or going through the Marcus Williams missing a big chunk of the season. They haven't missed a beat, and it's a compliment to everyone, quite frankly. And that's why I just said, as important as Roquan Smith is, as great as Roquan Smith is, it goes much more than that, runs much deeper than that for this Ravens defense that just continues to play at an absolute championship caliber level.
Well, you mentioned Matabike. His name came up in the post game with the 10, a week off now, concussion protocol. I mean, just from the injury level and where they're trying to get healthy, they only have one more West Coast trip left out to San Francisco to play a really tough team on Christmas night. They're going to be a national TV team now, played well in the bright lights of LA. They're going to do that against Jacksonville. They're going to have that similar opportunity against San Francisco. I don't know what gets flexed later on in the year. Pittsburgh keeps winning. Who knows, right? But I would say for them, this time off and this late bye and 9-3 and not full health, but good health, not Andrews aside, good health for them. And they're going to have to figure that out, how the offense is going to. They missed him on Sunday night. They miss him on third down every time there is a third down. And I think they miss him every time Lamar looks for him and he's not there. They're positioned in a way. When I began the segment saying Super Bowl favorite, nobody picks against them. You know what I mean? Like if the Chiefs had to come here and play, I have a feeling all those Sunday night people would pick the Ravens at this point because the Chiefs have not been as impressive. And the Ravens, for the 3 losses, the Ravens haven't played a stinker. And you mentioned confusing backup quarterbacks. They've now confused Herbert. They've now confused Goff. They've now confused Smith. They've gone through some starting quarterbacks, especially on the other side, on the NFC side. And they'll see a few more with Lawrence, and we'll see what Brock Purdy is. I think of that more as the offense and the system than I do the quarterback beating you as much as the system beating you. Did okay against Eckler, which says to me that the McCaffrey thing would be for them, but they've rarely been in this kind of a position where Buffalo stinks. Cincinnati doesn't have a quarterback. Cleveland, well, they have Joe Flacco, but they don't have a quarterback. The path through January looks a lot different to December 1st than it would have looked on August 1st as we looked at the division, as we looked at the conference, and we looked at it and said, yeah, they'll be 9-3 during their late bye and be relatively healthy. And most importantly, number 8 will be upright.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest point to take away going into the bye week, and knowing that we are going to be approaching, we're going to hit December later this week. The Ravens obviously don't play this week, but Lamar Jackson's healthy right now, and that has not been the case. He got hurt December 4th last year in that Denver game. So I think the late bye week is massive, depending on where you are. I mean, if the Ravens had been more banged up in, say, October, then yeah, you probably would have been looking at that differently, and you would have been saying, wow, they could really use the bye in week 6. So, to your point, they've had their share of injuries, but it hasn't been nearly what we were talking about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when they were dealing with so much on both sides of the ball. So it's a great opportunity for them. In fact, I mean, Nestor, this is the latest bye they've had since going back to 2000 and 2001. Now, 2001, okay, but 2000, we know what happened that year. And we know that you can speak to this way better than I can, having covered them at that point in time, that, there were veterans on that team who really appreciated and took advantage of the fact that they got some rest in the month of December before the final stretch. So you make a great point. The only thing I'll say, I don't think Buffalo stinks. Their record stinks, and that's what's going to keep them out, because they have a bear of a schedule. But I look at the current AFC playoff field right now, putting aside the 4 division leaders. But as things stand now, and again, we know it's only post Thanksgiving, a long way to go, but Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Indianapolis are in the 3 wildcard spots. And then I look at the in the hunt teams: Houston, Denver, Buffalo. If I'm an AFC contender, talking Kansas City, Baltimore, of course, Jacksonville, Miami, I mean, those are the teams that are all sitting there with 3 losses right now. Those are the top 4 teams in the conference right now. I'm all looking at that and saying, I'd much rather face Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Indianapolis than Houston, Buffalo, or Denver, and taking the Bengals out of it because Burrow's out for the year. So, but I look at that and I think not just were Eagles fans happy about that win, I think the rest of the AFC was happy with that win, because I still think Buffalo, from a talent standpoint, from a true talent standpoint, is still among, at least I'd say the 4 best teams in the AFC. But you got to win close games, and they've had injuries, and Josh Allen had some issues turning over the ball and some critical losses earlier in the year. They played a great game against the Eagles, but you look at them and their schedule at this point, Matt's not going to add up for them. I just don't think it's going to. So, yeah, if you're the rest of the AFC, you look at Pittsburgh, and okay, their yardage was better. Kenny Pickett played better than he has, but boy, that's not a very high bar at this point in time, is it? And the Browns, I mean,
Flacco's going to be their quarterback next week, right? I mean, he's going to quarterback a playoff game. I mean, I think he can hand the ball off to some degree, play some defense, and not screw up, and maybe they can go 500 the rest of the way, like literally.
Well, they're going to need him to do more than hand the ball off, because I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson hasn't been able to do more than hand the ball off. So they've got to make some plays in the passing game. And look, I mean, Joe Flacco is going to get an opportunity. I didn't look very good with the Jets last year, but he's got a much better, he's got a much better supporting cast around him, and we'll see what happens.
And he's got a record. He's got a lot of wins.
It certainly makes for a great story, one way or the other. I mean, can you imagine if it's the Browns coming into Baltimore for, first round, second round, whatever it is, and Joe Flacco's playing against the Ravens in Baltimore in a playoff game? I mean, that'd be incredible, from a theater standpoint. So, but yeah, you look at this conference right now, and Baltimore's legitimate. Kansas City's legitimate, regardless of, they haven't looked, they've looked flawed. Everyone looks flawed to different. I mean, the Ravens offense was not good on Sunday night in the first full game without Mark Andrews. I mean, that's going to be something they're going to have to go to work on. But, Jacksonville looks good at times. Other times they've looked bad. Miami, I mean, the Dolphins, that offense that was unbelievable earlier in the year hasn't been at that same level here recently, and certainly hasn't been as potent against quality opponents. So there are plenty of question marks in this AFC, which is fine. And the Ravens, I would say, at this point in time, other than I'm still going to give the Chiefs a nod. I'm just going to because they've earned that for the better part of 5 years. But other than the Chiefs, I mean, the Ravens certainly look better and way better than some of these other teams that are currently in the playoff field. So, get healthy, take advantage. Todd Monken needs to go to work. John Harbaugh needs to go to work. I don't know if Mike McDonald has too much work to do over the bye week other than just self-scouting and figuring out, not wanting to be too predictable, wanting to look at tendencies and doing the self-scouting that you're going to do. But I mean, this is a football team that has so much going for it right now. Even acknowledging missing Mark Andrews and the challenge that that's going to provide or going to create for them going forward. But I mean, this is a really good football team, and they've got a chance to not just be in the playoff field. I mean, they've already clinched a winning season. I mean, think about that for a moment, as they go into the bye week. But get a little healthier. I think it's important for this team to get fresh. Even guys that aren't injured, I think are certainly banged up and just want to get off their feet for a few days. And that's what the bye week affords. But they need to come back ready to play because as much as we're talking about the number one seed right now and their potential to do that, I mean, this is not a layup of a schedule when they come back. Even the Rams, which is the easiest of those 5 games left on paper, the Rams are playing a little bit better the last couple of weeks after looking like they were totally done a few weeks ago. So, but those last 4 games, I mean, if the Ravens are going to be the number one seed come week 18, they're going to earn it. I mean, there's no question about it when you look at those road games at Jacksonville, at San Francisco, and then finishing up with Miami. And we know, say what you want about Kenny Pickett or that offense, we know what the Steelers have done and been against the Ravens these last couple years. They've been a challenge. They've been a major pain in the you-know-what, and they've been a team that's had more success limiting Lamar Jackson than most teams out there. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for them, but how can you not feel really good about where they are right now going into the bye? Just the fact that they had the bye week this late, knowing where they are health-wise and knowing what benefit that should be on paper as they get a little bit of rest here coming up.
Should have bet the under on Sunday night. Not as many points scored in a 20-10 matchup, but certainly the Ravens covering the spread and getting the job done. Luke's around here. He's Baltimore Luke. He will not be on the fields at Owings Mills this week because nobody's doing anything. Luke's going to be mowing the lawn, hanging out, talking baseball, waiting for the Orioles to sign a lease and put their tickets on sale and all the stuff that I'm sure we'll be getting to here this week. We're doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. We'll have Ravens scratch-offs to give away Wednesday at Coco's. I'm wearing the Coco shirt. We'll be in Lauraville. I had a burger and fries with Marcella last week over Coco. Snuck in there with my wife. We'll be there Wednesday from 2 until 5. Sig is joining us. Ron Cassie from Baltimore Magazine will be there. Thursday, we are at Gertrude's at the BMA. Come on by the Hopkins campus, 1 till 5. We're going to be there with Dan Rodricks. Also, Odette Ramos, Councilwoman Ramos, going to be joining us, as well as John Shields and the folks at the BMA. And then on Friday, north, we're going to Cecil County. We're going up to Hollywood Casino in Perryville. Christian Horton's going to join us, as well as former Maryland Stadium Authority Chairman Tom Kelso, who you may have heard through the holiday. You may hear here this week. We are going to do a Maryland Stadium Authority and Stadia for Dummies series beginning Friday. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Win Donation, 866-90Nation. Buy 2, you get 2 free, 5 years, 0% financing through the holidays. Plus our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. I still have to get a prop for that to hold that up. But 3 Crab Cake Tours stops this week. We're going to be at State Fair on December 5th. We're going to be at Far and Dodder on December 15th. We're plotting a Wise stop up at the Honeygo Plaza in Perry Hall later on in the month before Christmas, and then we're going to be at Fadley's after Christmas. So plenty of crab cakes, plenty of football, plenty of exhaling going on as the first place and number 1 seeded Ravens pretty healthfully go on bye this week. Luke and I are going to continue on to talk about Lamar and the offense and the bye week and maybe some Orioles baseball. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive.